hit record. Hey, Polina.
Hey, Aladdin.
What's our plan for today? The session is going to last for 2 hours, and the first hour will be dedicated to the analysis of your inherited stuff. And then I'm going to look for your patterns that prevent you from achieving the goal that you will tell me. And then the second hour will be dedicated to, actually I will tell you what I've discovered during the first hour, during the analysis. And then I will tell you how to get rid of the most influential inherited pattern that prevents you from that most desired goal of yours. Okay?
Sounds good.
Cool. Okay. So we can start from the most important part. What's your number one goal? Or what's the number one problem that just hurts so much that you decided to take this session?
I want to work on my limiting beliefs and patterns that I started noticing recently when I started working on my own project. I realized and started noticing that when we discuss the new ideas and strategies, obviously the startup is somewhere where you need to discuss a lot of like new ideas, new strategies, and be with your strategists a lot day to day. Mm-hmm. And I started noticing that when it happens, I become very defensive. And I started opposing the new ideas and the new strategies. And yeah, that's probably my goal number one, to figure out why it's happening and why I become very defensive when we talk about new strategies and new ideas, and what is the pattern that is limiting me and doesn't allow me to work with the new ideas.
Okay, cool. Can you please just tell me about some specific example so that I could understand it better?
Sure. I'll try to come up with some examples for now. We're working on the EdTech project, and we're planning to help international students to come and study here in the United States. And right now we're working on designing the actual product and the educational plan for the coaching program that we're going to be offering. And there is so many different ways and directions that we can go. And it basically, right now we're doing like customer reviews and talking to the partners and different market players to figure out what are the actual needs for the customers. And every time we hear new ideas or suggestions from our partners or from our clients, that's the moment where I can feel like something starts rising in me, like inside me, that says, no, we're not going to change our direction. We already decided that we're going to go this path or this way, and we cannot change the directions every time we make the next step. So it's like really hard for me to, once we already decided where we're going to go, it's really hard for me to make the decision to go another way and another direction.
Gotcha. Okay. Can you please just turn on your imagination and imagine that you are the only one person who rules the company and who makes all the decisions, who makes the final decision, and you have like 100% of votes, and you decide like whether to change the direction or not. So can you please imagine that you decided to not to change the direction? What's going to happen? What do you feel can happen?
You mean like my feelings, or what's going to happen? Or
your feelings.
My feelings. I would feel more safe, I guess. Yeah. And more clear on where to go and what to do. However, I realize after thinking about it that it might not be the most effective strategy, and there might be that it makes some sense to change the strategy when we see, obviously, like we hear the feedback from the customers. However, emotionally, it's really hard for me because I feel like I'm going to be lost if we change the strategy. And that uncertainty scares me.
Mm-hmm. Is this your first own project?
Yes, when I'm as a co-founder, yes.
Do you own the majority of votes?
We haven't decided on the percentage yet, but there's 3 co-founders of the company.
And they are equal?
Yes, there is main founder whose idea, like who came up with the idea for the project, and there is 2 other co-founders, me and other co-founder.
Okay, so you don't have the majority of votes?
No. Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm. What was your motivation to join this business?
There is a few things. The first one, I really enjoy working in the edtech space and working on the educational products for youth specifically that I know can bring a lot of impact and change somebody's lives. And the other thing, it's a really amazing team that I enjoy working with and that I'm learning from pretty much every other day. And the third thing was that I wanted to start working on my own independent projects where I'm not working for someone or I'm not hired by someone, but where there is a possibility to do something on our own.
Okay, it's like your next step after this business is going to be your own business, 100% of ownership.
I'm not sure. I'm figuring it out right now if I want to do that or if I want to continue working with partners and having co-founders.
Okay, does it warm your heart? Does it warm your heart, this idea?
What is that?
Does the idea of owning your own, of having your own business where you like the only person who decides, does this idea warm your heart?
It scares more than it warms my heart, I guess, because I realize right now I have partners that are strong in their own fields and we can complement each other. If we're talking about me owning 100% of the project, I'm not sure if I'm confident enough or capable enough and have enough experience to own it 100% and make decisions on my own 100%.
What can happen?
The risk of failure and that it's going to be my 100% my responsibility, that scares me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, 100% of your responsibility, and you have the worst case scenario of failure. What's gonna happen after you will face the failure?
I'm gonna be judging myself for the failure, and I'm gonna be feeling like it's gonna be really hard for me to overcome. But when I think about it deeper, I realize that it's gonna take some time to overcome, and then I'll be fine. It's just a matter of time.
Okay, you start judging yourself. What's gonna happen next?
I'm gonna think of myself lower, I guess.
So your self-esteem will decrease.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. When you have this feeling, when you start being defensive during discussing new strategies, how does your self-esteem feels at that time?
When I become defensive,
Yeah.
it's not, obviously it's not like on the top, or I don't know how to describe it, because when I become defensive, it's when I relate to my scared parts. And I'm not confident about myself in that moment. I don't believe that I can handle that certain thing that we're discussing, or that it can be possibly done by me, which is weird because I don't have any, it's purely emotional, like it's not rational at all. There's no evidences that I cannot do that, or there's no, I haven't even tried to start thinking about it, how I can possibly do it, or what ways or tools can help me to achieve it. It's just like immediate emotional reaction and feeling that I'm not sure if I can handle it.
Cool. Tell me, please, who of your ancestors didn't handle something very important?
If I know specific cases when my ancestors didn't handle something.
Yeah, do you know anything about that?
I'm not sure if my ancestors actually followed what they really wanted to follow. I think it was more like they had to make money and have a job, so they started doing something. And I don't know if anybody of them had their own projects, but actually I remember that some of them had pretty high positions, like management positions. And they handled it well, as far as I know. At least I don't know any stories or cases of the failures.
Okay, cool. Let's dive deeper. Let's move on to the analysis part. Can you please tell me what's your mother's name?
Alina.
When was she born?
June 29, 1966.
1966. Okay. What was her biggest failure?
What was her biggest what?
Failure.
Failure.
As she thinks about it.
As she thinks about it. My mother, not my like grandmother or anyone. Okay. She tried to start a project between Russia and United States, and it didn't work out because of the relationship between the two countries. And when she moved to United States, she couldn't find a job for a very long time. And I would guess, I don't know for a fact, but I would guess that she would think it would be her biggest failure.
For how long?
3 or 4 years.
So she wanted to launch a project between the United States and the USSR, or the Russia. What was at the time? USSR or Russia?
Russia. It was 4 years ago.
Oh, okay. Russia. 4 years ago. So, okay, so she wanted to try this project, and since that time, she has like a complete failure.
Kind of, yes. She find a temporary job right now, but it's still not something that she really wants to. It's not her passion.
Mm-hmm. And what do you feel about it? Who is the owner of that idea? Or the creator?
Who's the owner of the idea?
To have the project between the United States and Russia.
She initiated, and I helped her with
Mm-hmm.
implementing it or planning it.
Mm-hmm.
So she was the owner of the idea.
Okay. Did she have any other failures before that?
Yes, I just remembered one more. When she had her own public relations agency, and her biggest client, it was before that, when she was in Russia, and she had her biggest client in the aviation industry, and then something happened with that aviation client, and she lost that client and that account, and her firm really depended on that one major client.
Mm-hmm.
So she had to close her agency and she had to stop that business.
Mm-hmm. How did she get that client?
She met him at some industry events through connections.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other failures?
Those are the biggest ones.
Mm-hmm. She was born in 1966, so
Yes.
she is like 52 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big period of time to have a lot of failures to do. So during the when were you born?
What was that?
When were you born?
1992.
1992. Okay, so you were born right after Soviet Union
Collapsed.
Did your mother tell you anything? What did she do during that period of time before 1992?
She had my brother, and before that she had a pretty promising career. She started working, I was born in a small city, and she was working with the first foreigners that came to Soviet Union. She was translating for them, and then she got a job with a company that that foreigner worked for. Mm-hmm. And she was handling basically like public relations, but at that time there was no term like that, so it was like managing communications within that enterprise and company.
So that was a job of dreams of all the people of the USSR.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And for how long did you work there?
For 3 or 4 years, I would guess, and then she had my brother, and she started working again, and then she had me. And after that, she moved to Moscow, and she started working. She worked for a couple big agencies there that were working between Russia and United States, like financial aid programs and things like that. And after that, she started her own agency,
mm-hmm.
public relations agency.
So when she was working for like for 3-4 years for foreigners, and after that your brother was born. So did she love that kind of job she had? How do you think?
Yes.
And after like your brother was born, and she like lost the job. How did it happen? So why, after having your brother, she finished working there?
Oh, she had her maternity leave like for a very short period of time, and then she came back to work and started working again, and then she had me. So she didn't lose her job. It was just
okay.
Yeah, it was maternity leave for like a couple of months.
Mm-hmm. And then she came back and worked for the same company.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So nothing changed.
Mm-mm. No.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then after that, she started her own business.
She worked for a large project between Russia and United States in Moscow. She moved to Moscow when I was born and worked for that project for like a couple of years. And then she started her own agency.
Mm-hmm. Do you know anything? Why did she start her own agency? Did she have some sort of dreams to make more money? Or...
Yes, she was very ambitious always. That's why her career was like always going up and getting the best opportunities. And whenever she And whenever she saw the opportunity, she would definitely pursue it. And that's how she started her agency, because there was the project that she was working on. I think she met some partners that needed someone to handle the public relations for them. And she was so good with it, even though she didn't get any education. And it was just like, it was really, the industry was just rising at that time. No one really knew what is public relations, but she already had some idea, and she was always good with communication. So she started providing the services on her own, and then she realized that she can build the agency out of it and find big clients and accounts.
Okay, for how long did she have like that prosperous time when she made more money compared to her previous job?
10 years, or even a little bit more than that, like 12 years maybe.
During 10, 12 years, she was dependent on the biggest client.
Most of the time, yeah. She had other big clients in the beginning, but then it all came down to her service and that major client, because that major client needed more and more work to be done. So she kind of became their like outside communications department and relied mostly on him, or most of her business relied on him and that client.
What has changed? Can you remind me in details? What has changed with that client that he stopped working with your mother?
There were some changes in the industry. That aviation client was dependent on the government, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but there was something like the government regulations, or someone from the government decided to change the CEO of that aviation plant. And I think that's what happened, like the change in the management, and the new CEO was not open to working with her. And there was really no need for that services anymore, because I think they became like government owned or something like that. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Can you please tell me about your father? What's his name?
Konstantin, or Costa. whatever is easier.
When was he born?
July 1968.
What was the biggest change in his life that caused something bad in his life?
Wow, that's a really good question. I would think that the fact that he didn't make a decision to move out from his mother's house, and he was always living with his mother in the same apartment, would be really something that changed his whole life direction. I don't know if it was because he was scared to leave her by herself, or he was scared to live on his own. But he never moved out from his family's place, home.
Does he still live with his mother?
Yes. The only time when I know that he didn't live with his mother is when he was married to my mom, but it was a very short period of time. It was like 2 years or something like that.
So during 2 years, they have created 2 kids?
Yeah.
Okay. Your brother was born in 1990?
Yes.
And after that, they divorced?
After my birth, they divorced, yeah. Pretty sure.
Right after your birthday?
I guess maybe it was like almost 3 years, something like that. Yeah, but after my birth, pretty shortly, I think I was a couple months old when they moved out, and then they divorced officially later.
Why did they divorce?
My mom found another partner.
And did she marry him?
Yes, that was the foreigner, one of the first foreigner that came to Soviet Union that she was translating for. She married him, and that's why she moved to Moscow afterwards. Because he was living in Moscow. He had a contract there. What is his name? John.
Do they still live together?
No, they divorced, I think, like 3 years after or something like that.
Do they have kids?
No.
Did your mother marry after that?
No.
So she is an independent woman.
Independent businesswoman. Yeah.
Are you married?
No.
Like, were you?
What is that?
Were you married?
No. Not yet.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any relations with your father?
Not very close. I feel like he was scared, or he didn't know how to be a father and how to provide the support to me. He's more close with my brother because it's easier for them to build relationships with each other and have conversations.
Mm-hmm.
With me, I feel like he never knew how he can support me and what role he can play in my life, because I was very close with my mother, and my mother is very opposite to my father. My mother is, like, as you said, very independent, confident woman, and my father is like totally opposite. He's very indecisive, and he never really tried to, I feel like he never really tried to pursue what he wanted, and it was more like trying to support his mother and trying to make a living, but not really using his potential to become the best.
Mm-hmm. How often do you talk to each other?
Once in a month, once in 2 months, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And with your mother?
More often, every week for sure, a couple times a week.
Mm-hmm. What does your father tell you about that short period of time in his life when he made that huge change?
He never really talks about his emotions or his life events or his journey the journey in his life.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like talking about the weather and what's happening, I don't know, like with the family, rather than him sharing his experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to ask him a couple of times about the marriage, because I've heard that from other family members that it was really hard for him to deal with the divorce with my mom. And I've heard that for a couple of years he was really struggling with it. But whenever I asked him, he never really answered me directly,
Mm-hmm.
and tried to avoid the questions or answers.
What other your relatives told you about that hard period of time? What specifically was hard for him?
My grandmother was saying that he loved my mom very much. It was really hard for him to deal with the fact that she found another partner and fell in love with someone else. And because of that, they had to split the family, and they had to decide where the kids are going to grow and who they're going to be with. And that was a really hard moment for him. And then my grandmother, at least, is saying that he loved my mom a lot, and he was loving her for like 3 or 4 years after the divorce, and maybe after that he could really move on and find another partner.
So he married?
Yes. Mm-hmm. It was a very short marriage. I don't remember the other partner that he had, because I was living with my mom at that moment. And I think they were married for like a year or 2, and I haven't seen my father in that period of time. Or I was very small, I don't even remember her.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Do you know anything about parents of your mother?
Very few details. They were not in the best relationship with them, or they decided not to have relationships with me. I know that my grandmother by my mother's side was working at the university on some research, and she was doing pretty similar things that my mom did. She was doing kind of like public relationships and communications for that research university.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather, by my mother's side, I don't know really any. I think he was working in some technical field, but I'm not sure what exactly he was doing for the job, for work.
And you mentioned that they don't want to communicate with you, with your family.
They have really hard relationships with my mom, and because of that, they just decided that because I'm the daughter of my mom, they are not going to become close with me.
Why?
There were many conflicts between my mom and my grandmother, and they were fighting for a long time, and they're not fighting now, but they just are not close with each other. And I guess because of that, my grandmother projected all of that fights that they had to me, and she felt like I'm very similar to my mom, and she felt like she didn't want to really get closer.
What was like the most often reason for fighting?
My grandmother would always think that my mother is offending her with some requests. Because my mother is very independent, she was always very straight about her wills or wishes. And whenever there was a question about property or something like that, or like they were even just having conversation about what my mom was doing and what was new in her life, my grandmother would always, I don't really remember the exact reasons for the fights, but it was always my grandmother would misunderstand something. She would think that my mother is offending her, and they would start arguing. And because they are very independent and very powerful, they need to have a power, they couldn't really find that balance between them.
So they wanted to be they wanted to have relations like a general and soldier, but your mother didn't want to be a soldier.
Yes. Exactly.
And who was the dominating partner in their marriage? A grandfather or grandmother?
Grandmother.
What's her name?
Irina.
And what's your grandfather's name?
Vladimir.
Cool. Did they have any other kids besides your mother?
Yes, my uncle. He's younger than my mom. I think he's a couple of years younger.
Is he the one who is dominating, or?
My mom is dominating.
And he is suppressing himself?
Kind of, yes. He tried to be independent also for some time, and that's when they started having fights. So all three of them, my mother, my uncle, and my grandmother. And after that, I think they even stopped talking to each other for 5 or 6 years.
Who is dominating in your company?
Technically, the founder has the majority of the company, and he came up with the idea.
Yeah, and in fact?
What is that?
So technically he is, but in fact?
But in fact, we're still, I think, figuring out the areas of responsibilities for each other. And
who is that person who wants to dominate?
Jesus Christ. That's a very tough question. I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to dominate sometime subconscious. Like I'm not doing that consciously. I'm doing that subconsciously just because of the nature of the relationships that I've seen. Like I've seen my mom owning her business and my grandmother owning the family. And I can totally see right now that pattern. However, when I'm conscious, I'm trying to find the balance and
you suppress yourself.
yes. Yes. That's exactly what's happening.
Okay. Do you know anything about parents of your father? You already told that his mother is dominating.
Yes, that's happening now because my grandfather is dead. He died like 10 years ago.
What was the reason?
He had liver problem, and that was family inherited. So the same reason for the death was for his mother, his sister, and I think like most of his family.
Okay. What's your grandmother's name?
Tamara.
And your grandfather's?
Grigori.
Do you know what specific problems did he have and his relatives, his ancestors have with the liver?
No, I don't know the details.
Some sort of cancer, or it's just some sort of chronic disease, or did they like drink alcohol too much, stuff like that?
I think it was cancer. But he also was drinking a lot of alcohol.
Your father? Alcohol?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
You?
No. You made me think about it right now. No. At least I don't think it's a problem with the alcohol.
Okay. Cool. Do you know anything specific in life of Irina, mother of your mother? What kind of changes in her life happened that actually changed her life, not for good, but for didn't increase level of her life, but decreased it actually?
My mother, so the real father of my mother is not her husband. It was someone else she worked with, and he had another family. So when she became pregnant, he didn't decide to leave his other family, and he stayed with his other family. And she was really heartbroken, and she had to find another husband. And my grandfather, I don't know how they met exactly, but my grandfather decided to marry her. And I think that was the biggest pain in her life. Another big pain in her life was the death of her father. At least that's what I've heard from my mother's stories, that when her father died, she felt like she lost the support and the power that she had, because her father was very influential in the city or something like that. And she was really upset and sad for a long time, depressed for a long time.
Mhm. Is Vladimir alive?
Mm-hmm. Yes, but they have very hard very tough relationship.
Mhm. It's very tough to live with generals.
Yes. I can totally see that.
And uncle or brother of your mother,
Mhm.
he is a child of Vladimir.
Yes.
Mhm. Did your mother have any relations with her real father?
He died shortly after she was born. He died, I think, when she was like 1 year old or 2 years old.
Mhm.
But she found the other, like his son, his other son. She found him and tried to contact him and to learn more about her real dad.
And how did it happen?
It was fine. I think they met once, and it was really important for her to at least learn a little bit more about her real dad. And he also gave her the picture of the dad, so she finally knew how he looked like.
Mhm.
After that, they never contacted again, but I don't think they wanted really to contact more. It was just like one time.
Mhm. That's cool.
And my grandfather was really upset when he found out.
So he didn't know. So he was upset about that contact.
Yeah, he was upset that my mom was trying to learn more about her father, and when he saw that she has a picture of her real father, he became even more upset, and they stopped looking for each other for like quite a long time.
Mhm. Okay, what kind of change in life of Tamara happened after the change? Her life like became worse.
She loved someone, but she couldn't marry that guy, and I think he died. He was swimming in the lake, and is it called thrown? Yes, when you're like he didn't
Drowned.
survive. Hmm? What was it?
He drowned.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he didn't survive, and it was, as far as I understand, it was the biggest love of her life. But then she married my dad, and the other,
Your grandfather.
oh, sorry, my grandfather, yes. And the other thing that changed her life, she lost her other son, my dad's brother,
Mhm.
when he was like 20 years old or something like that.
What happened?
There was some weird story. Him and his friends found the pieces of the airplane somewhere in the field, and they were playing around those pieces of the airplane, and shortly after he died, and they said that it was because it was radiation.
Mm-hmm.
But no one really knows what exactly happened, and was that the radiation. Like, no one could really define the reasons why he died. It was very quick, and in a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Konstantin is her only son right now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the last thing that changed her life was the divorce of my mom and my dad. She really couldn't understand my mother, and for a very long time, as far as I remember when I was growing up, she was always telling the stories how bad my mom was because she ruined the family.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, I'll tell you right now what I have discovered. And you will have what to talk with all your dominative relatives, ancestors. And you will see that they are actually very much like you.
What?
They are like mirrors of each other. Okay, so the question that you mentioned in the beginning, that you become very defensive once you hear every new strategy. And this is why I ask you so many questions about any changes that happened in lives of your ancestors. And I can see that it's a specific pattern that once you change something in your life, and what's even more important, that when you choose something that you love the most, you lose it. When you have like a regular life, and then you decide to choose something that you love, and you feel that uplift, and then after that it just dies. And it's when I tell you, I mean like genes that you have and all the ancestors that you have. And here are like the specific events that happened in your life, in life of your ancestors, that live on the emotional level of you. So emotional level, when you can't rationalize what's happening, when you just feel, this is what your parents and their parents had specific in their lives, but you don't remember that. This is written in your genes. This is like the memory of your subconsciousness. And when you have some sort of trigger, and for you specifically, trigger is something when something changes. This trigger activates a specific bullet in a huge list of bullets in your DNA. And that specific bullet says, no changes, it will hurt. And your grandmother, Irina, when she decided to change her life and fell in love, her heart was broken. When your father decided to fall in love, his heart was broken. When your grandmother, Tamara, decided to fall in love, her heart was broken. And then she fell in love with her son, and she lost his son. And then she fell in love with, or simultaneously, she fell in love with her second son, and he married. And she considered that as she lost her only son. So her specific pattern is to lose what she starts to love. She starts loving. Your father inherited that same pattern. Once he falls in love, he loses. Your mother has exactly the same pattern. But it's like the same coin, and she has a flip side. Mm-hmm. So your grandmother, Tamara, she was the person who loved, but she couldn't get that love. She considered herself as a victim of something that didn't allow her to love. The same pattern was passed to your father, so he was considering himself as a victim of that foreigner, John. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with Irina. She also considered herself as a victim. Her heart was broken, not by her own decision. But your mother, in the relations of between her and your father, she was the one who punished a victim. He was on the flip side of the same coin. But actually, this is the same pattern. They both had relations, and they just ended up with nothing or with pain. She also, I'm sure, and you can prove that she also didn't feel very happy about the divorce with your father. It was not as fun, as big fun as to watch a movie. And then she had relations with John that ended up with nothing again. And this kind of pattern, it just sits deep inside of you. It lives in your subconsciousness. It manages your life, your emotional level of life, the one that you can't control. And every time when you hear something new, and especially something that you love, the whole system, the whole subconsciousness level tells you, no, change nothing, please, because it will hurt. And this is what happens, why it happens. But it's only a top level of why, because there is a lower, deeper level of why that happens. And your parents, your grandparents had no idea why they followed that pattern. They just followed it because they had no choice. They inherited to follow that pattern. And your father had no choice not to become a victim. of something that he loves the most, his life. He was born with that pattern. And now you are at what age? Let me count a little. So your brother was born in 1990, and your mother is 1966. So she was 70, 80, 34 years old. And your father was 32 years old. Correct?
When he was born, when my brother was born?
When they married, when they found each other.
I think she was like 25 or something like that. Was it that late? Or maybe.
So your brother was born in 1990.
Yes, and she was born in 1966. Okay, yeah.
24, so not 34, but 24. Mm-hmm. 24, correct. And your father was 22.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 22. And you are 26.
Yes.
And you started following your dream at 26. So you're approximately at the same age when your mother and father decided to follow their heart. And you finally decided to follow your heart. And it was scary for you. So just that must be scary for you even to join this new venture. Did you feel any kind of fear when you decided to join this business with these current founders?
No, I wasn't scared in the beginning at all. I was more excited. It was interesting for me because it happened naturally. The founder of the project shared with me the idea, and I just started. We started discussing how it can be worked out and how we can launch it, and then. So it wasn't like the agreement or something where he came up to me and said, "Hey, do you want to work for this project?" It just happened naturally. We started working on it together. It was just two of us in the beginning, and then we found our third co-founder. So my fears really started showing up only in a later stage when we started going into details and realizing that we're gonna. Actually, it was very interesting change because it was easy for me to be part of the project and brainstorm when I didn't have clear role and responsibilities. It was me just like talking to him and spending some of my time, and it wasn't clear if I'm going to be part of it at all, or if he's going to offer me any role or any percentage. And then after we started working on it, when it became clear that, okay, I'm going to be the other co-founder, then I think it was for me like the turning point when I realized that now I'm responsible. And now I have to evaluate and measure everything that goes through me. And that's where I started becoming defensive when we talk about the new ideas or like new directions.
This is what you told. These are exactly the same feelings that your father felt.
Can you tell more about that?
So when they started relations with Alina, he was very excited. He was in pure love. There are no responsibilities, no thoughts about future. He just feels love. And then after he realizes that their relations can become deeper, he understands that, oh my God, I need to have some sort of responsibility in this kind of partnership. And then he falls into the second pattern that I didn't mention earlier. And the second pattern is that in every relation, every kind of relation that your ancestors had, these are relations of a dominating person and a suppressing person. So once that short period of time of being in love eventually came to that part when relations should be somehow organized, and those responsibilities should be somehow organized. This is when the war of the power starts. And it's easy for your father to give the main role to your mother because he used to do that role since his child. And but it's not the decision that is pleasant. It's not pleasant when somebody tells you what to do, how to do, and why, and stuff like that. When you are a dependent soldier, it looks like when you have a friend and you have some sort of relations, and he promises you something and then he breaks that promise. When the pure friendship gets replaced with some sort of interest, when they start to share that level of power. And during that process, love gets killed. This is the first time when love gets killed. And it doesn't get killed like this is love, and this is love, and then like this. And in order to understand, so your current, as you don't have a husband, your pattern tries to deal with what he has, it has, and you have relations with your business partners. So this is where your pattern tries to show its beauty, its hidden beauty. And when in your relations, like there are two opposite sides that you try to achieve. From one side, you want to be the number one person who owns 100% of everything, who has 100% of votes, who rules the world. And from the other side, you are scared of responsibility. So this is a kind of leadership when you tell what to do, but you have no responsibility. This is like your mother and father inside you both. From one side, you want to dominate. From another side, you want to have zero responsibility. So your father is very alive in you.
Yeah.
And let's get back to the changes and to the failures. So another in your mother's life, there was also a kind of change that has changed her life, decreased level of her life, and that was when CEO of that aviation company changed, and she stopped her business, and then she started that project of her dreams, another project of her dreams between the United States and Russia, and she failed and couldn't find even any job in the United States for her. And these are the consequences of the changes that she decided to do, or the consequences of the changes that happened without her control. So there are two kinds of changes that subconsciously you are afraid of. First changes are when you choose something that you love, and this is your decision to start working with this project. You mentioned that you love a lot of things about this project. So you enjoy youth, you enjoy impact that you can make, you enjoy the fact that you can change lives, you enjoy the amazing teams. So you have chosen to follow your heart. But on the subconscious level, it's written to.
So, yeah.
Yeah, when you follow your heart, it's a big change in your life, and it's gonna break your heart. And the whole system, till nowadays, works the way that your heart is gonna be broken if you don't change the pattern you follow, because the ancestors of yours, they had those bad consequences, not because they followed their heart, but because they did something they just didn't notice. And that something is that something that you still follow and don't notice. And that something is the real reason of the result when your heart is broke.
So you mean they did something and that's why they lost it, but they didn't know? Like they were...
Yeah, they thought that, so still you think that the real reason for the broken heart is when they decided to follow their heart. It's lies. It's the lies. It's the huge, huge lies. But they didn't know this. They still think, they still believe that the fact that they decided to fall in love, to change something in their life, to follow their heart, is the real reason for their heart was broke.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what you still believe in subconsciously. So when you are like 26 and you're during like quarter of the century, you didn't decide to follow your heart because it's dangerous. It's scary. And you mentioned that you are scared of the failure. So in business, it's failure. It's called failure. But in marriage, it's called heartbroken.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually these events, they are equal in your life. And you mentioned that you will be judging yourself, and this is what your mother did. She was judging herself for like divorcing your father, and your father was judging himself for not being as good husband or whatever, that your mother fell in love with another guy. And also you're scared, you mentioned that you will be scared that your self-esteem will decrease. And you can imagine how radically self-esteem of your father decreased.
Yes.
And self-esteem of Tamara. And the self-esteem of your mother also decreased after she lost that biggest client.
Yes.
And self-esteem of Irina, and her heart was broken. So the fears that you mentioned, they are not yours. Your ancestors felt them in just a bit different sphere of life that you didn't notice, but they're actually the same. And these consequences, they have a specific reason. Once you realize that reason, first time in history of all your ancestors, you will have choice. Once you understand it. And this is how, like, this process happens. When you have some sort of pattern, subconscious pattern, it happens automatically. This is like you mentioned, like you told this, like you said, on the emotional level. This is what happens, and you just have no control over it. It just happens. Like you're a robot, and you like just follow some sort of program, and you just can't do anything. You just follow that program and can't do anything with that. And this is how like all human beings work. They have their conscious part, and they control something, and subconscious part, and they can control. They actually work like biological robots. We all work like biological robots. And the size of our consciousness is 1/6. Let me calculate. 1/6. This is 16%. So 84% belong to the subconscious level. So we act like biological robots by 84%. When you look into the mirror, you can see like 84% of biological robot and 14% of you. And that part, those 84%, they are like your subconscious level. When you don't understand, when you don't see the reason, when you don't understand why it happens, it continues to work automatically. The only way how you can change something in that automated programmed part of you is when you use your consciousness. What we were doing during 1 hour and 21 minutes was we were focusing your consciousness on something that was happening subconsciously. When you focus your attention on this, this is the process when you get your hands, your consciousness, take that pattern and move it from the subconscious level to the conscious level. And when you do it, you first time in your life, you get the power to change it. because the only thing that is under your control is your consciousness. And then once you have this in your consciousness, the next step is to realize the reason that lays behind all the solution or all the decisions of your ancestors that they made subconsciously, automatically. But you now can realize consciously why they did that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So we have enough information about the real reason of the broken heart of your grandmother Irina. She decided to fall in love, and she thinks that that fact that she fell in love with the guy she loves was the reason of her biggest disappointment in her life. But the real reason was that she fell in love with a married guy.
Yes.
She allowed herself to follow the broken path. So when you fell in love, when you allow yourself even to look in the direction of a married guy and try to think about falling in love with him, that specific decision is the reason for her broken heart, not the love. It's like to break she broke the law, broke the law of the universe, or whatever you can call it.
Mm-hmm.
Then she decided to have relations with a married guy. And that is the real reason. Then your grandmother Tamara, she lost the guy she loved, and then she lost her son, and she thinks in you that she did that because she actually fell in love. She put them in her heart. This is why she feels her heart is broken. But the real reason is different. The real reason is a very huge and powerful pattern that you inherited from all of your ancestors. This is like the #1 pattern. This is a pattern to actually kill a person mentally. When you tell somebody to do what that person doesn't want, you kill a person mentally. So mentally, you kill his desired direction. If you imagine a person not like a body, but like an army of desires, intentions, and every time when you tell don't do this, you just kill like a bunch of soldiers in that army. And our body actually is a result of our mental activity. Our mental activity, it changes very quickly. You can kill the dream very quickly, but it takes a lot of time to kill all the army, and after that, a person just loses any reason to live. Can you imagine life when all your desires are killed or blocked or drawn or tied?
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually the real reason why your grandmother was losing people she loved the most. She was killing them mentally. And then the material form of life just mirrored what was happening mentally. And it doesn't matter what specific reason. Was it an airplane or an accident, or he was drawn or killed, whatever, it doesn't matter. Life can find millions of ways how to turn into reality what happens in our mental world.
Mm-hmm.
You as an entrepreneur, you know, you as an upcoming entrepreneur know that every business starts with idea. And that idea is naked and you have no plan how to turn it into reality. But there are millions of ways how to turn that idea into the reality. And this is actually the same process what happens when you actually kill your idea. There are millions of ways how to actually kill like the body as a final point of the process. So you kill one by one all those soldiers, and then no one left. The body has nothing to do on this planet, and you just find something radioactive or whatever. And Tamara thought that her son died because of that new airplane thing nobody knew anything about. So she passed you that fear of something new, something undiscovered, because it can be dangerous. In order to get rid of that, that fear that lives on the emotional level, you need to consciously understand the real reason. The real reason is not that new thing, new radioactive thing. The real reason is the mental death. And you mentioned that Grigory, your father, Vladimir, they all loved alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And alcohol is actually the thing that saves their life. Because when they are drunk, this is the only state when they can defend their soldiers, their mental dreams, when they feel like they have power. This is the only way they discovered during their life, and they inherited that way of defending their soldiers. So the fact that they drink is a good fact for them specifically, because without that they would be dead. So you've inherited like 3 ways of behaving: to dominate, to be suppressed and die, or to be suppressed and drink. And these are the ways that you subconsciously were choosing between. So you don't love to be suppressed, so you try to dominate. And subconsciously you feel when you are suppressed, first you get dead mentally. When somebody tells you what to do, you feel like a piece of you dies. And it's not a pleasant feeling. So on the inherited level, you have only one solution how to avoid this, is to dominate. This is why you still don't have those responsibilities written in detail, because the only way how you can partner is to be the person who is dominating, or to be suppressed and die.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to die, so you are looking for domination. But when you dominate, you kill your partners mentally.
Yes.
And as a result, they die and your heart is broken. And there are a lot of ways how they can die. So physical death is like the final point, but before that they can die by just quitting. They can find a lot of reasons why they should quit. But subconsciously they will feel that somebody is killing them.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, you can fix this once you realize that there is an alternative 4th path that your ancestors had no idea about. So again, they understand and know on the 3 ways. First, dominate. Second, to be suppressed and die. Third, to be suppressed and drink. There is the 4th path to follow. And that path is when you don't dominate and don't suppress. When you actually love those soldiers, that army in every person, when you allow them to be who they are and to follow their dreams and to use their strengths. Your mother and grandmothers, all your grandmothers, your mother, they are the same. They are like 3 generals. And it's like impossible to have 3 generals in the same room. Yeah, and they were following this path because they thought that this is the only way how they can get what they want. And the whole story of your family shows that this path just doesn't work. When you dominate, you kill, and you end up with your heart broken. So domination doesn't work. Suppressing doesn't work, because when you suppress, you die or you drink. So suppressing doesn't work. So every time you feel the desire to dominate or to get suppressed, you need to consciously remember this important thing, that they don't work. They lead you either to your heart is broken, will be broken, or they lead you to the death, mental or tons of forms of death. The alternative path is to love desires and strengths of people, of your partners, and do not try to suppress them. Do not try to. Your actual goal is to find. It's very hard because nobody before you did this. It's very hard, but your success depends on how good you are in finding the ways how to marry those soldiers inside you and inside those partners of yours. Not to kill, marry. So you have some sort of strength, they have some sort of strength. And your goal is to marry those strengths. Then this is the biggest patterns of yours. It will take you some time to somehow develop your ability to marry, because you've inherited that power, that skill to divorce, to dominate. Either I dominate or goodbye. That way of behaving. Your level of success depends on you step by step focusing your attention every time you have some sort of conflict. How can I marry my strength with strength of that person? This is an uncommon idea for your inherited system. Common idea is how I can suppress him, how I can force him. But every time you feel that, your only power is your consciousness. Once you feel it, you consciously start saying, this is like the inherited way of behaving. And it will lead me to my heart will be broken, or that person or me will die, or our relations will die. So I won't gonna follow that path. My goal is to, how can I marry his strengths and my strengths? And every time when you feel like that, before that, every time you notice this feeling that you want to dominate, to suppress somebody, you can write down this in some sort of document, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you would have like that conscious focus, and you will see that specific list. That specific list was happening automatically without your conscious attention.
Mm-hmm.
When you do this consciously, you establish power over that pattern that was happening subconsciously, automatically. And when you think how to, every time when you write this down, you can get back to this list and see like your progress. You can see how you actually change your automated pattern. This will be your like to-do list of changing your inherited subconscious pattern. And every time you think of, instead of how to suppress, when you think how to marry, how to marry our strength,
Mm-hmm.
you overcome that inherited path to have your heart broken or to die. You choose another path that leads you to prosperity, to growth, and to partnerships that never ends. Because mentally, when you don't suppress a person, you help that person to grow, you help that person to make his soldier stronger, and as a result, that person becomes stronger. And at the same time, you don't allow your soldiers to die. You don't do this by suppressing yourself. You help your soldiers, and you make them stronger. And this is a kind of win-win cooperation. All the previous ways of the inherited ways of cooperation before, they were lose-lose ways.
Mm-hmm.
Even though a person who was dominating thought that this kind of cooperation is win-lose cooperation. On the long run, both lost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so every time you hear any new idea, any new strategy,
Mm-hmm.
you need to consciously understand that this new idea won't die if it's legal, number one. If it's a win-win strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like your easy filter. Every time you hear a new strategy, you just before that, subconsciously, you just hated every new idea because it could ruin your life. But now, when you understand that the real reason for bad changes in lives of your ancestors aren't actually the changes, but the bad things they chose. Like, for example, another example of your mother. By working with that one biggest client, she actually chose huge dependency. So the real reason for her business stopped was not the change in the government, or was not the change of the CEO. The real reason was that she chose dependency. And by dependency is just another synonym for suppressing. When all your business is dependent on one client, and that client is dependent on government.
Like a change.
Yeah. You just end up with the consequences of the dependency. And that must happen at some point. And it did happen. And that is the reason, not the change.
Mm-hmm.
Suppressing dependency. Actually, when a person dominates, it attracts people who dominate because they act like on the same radio frequencies. They talk the same language and they see each other like in the crowd. And as a result, they attract people who dominate even more than they dominate. Because that coin always has a flip side. You dominate in something and you are dependent in another thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the real reason for failure of your mother is not the change. The real reason is dominating and depending. Another reason, another synonym of dependency is lack of responsibility. When you don't take responsibility, you give away like the control over your life by your own will. When you feel like you can dominate and all the responsibility is on other people, you actually give away all control over your life to other people. It looks like they do everything you tell them and they hold the responsibility, but without those people, you can do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're fully dependent on them. So the real reason for the broken heart of your father is that he didn't want to take responsibility. This is why he had that result when he didn't have control over happiness of his family. a person with the name John appeared in his life and ruined it. He appeared because he didn't want to take responsibility. This is the reason, not mother. Even by thinking that your mother is the reason, is the way of thinking, then you get all the responsibility over happiness of your family to another person. So there is that way of, it feels like you get rid of some sort of blame inside of yourself when you give away your responsibility. So you won't be ashamed, you won't be judged. But these are just, this is just fog. It doesn't exist. In fact, what happens in fact is you just, by your own will, give away control over your life. And this is the real reason for having the life that you have no control over. Your father thought that he fell in love, and this is the reason. No. Your father thought that another reason for his unhappy life is your mother. No. The real reason is lack of responsibility. I am responsible for happiness. I. The only person who is responsible for my happiness is me. The only person who is responsible for your success is
me.
Yeah. When you tell this, you get control over your life back. When you have control over your life, you can plan your success. And your success depends on nobody but you. Your relations with your feelings during the relations with your partners depend on you, because this is your body, this is your mental human being, this is you feeling them. And your feelings, they are dependent on you interpreting specific events. Nobody have control over your feelings. Nobody have control over your success. If you decide to take full responsibility. Make sense?
Yes. I feel like I'm really hoping that many people can have a chance to work with you and discover those patterns that are really stopping them from very important things happening in their life. And I'm really thankful, because this is the exact moment when I feel like it was the turning point. If I didn't talk to you and work with, even you wouldn't work with me right now through all of those things, I would lose the project or like kill the team and the idea and all of that goodness that is happening around there. I'm just speechless right now. So, I'm trying to formulate my thoughts, but there's a lot of things happening right now in my mind.
Cool. Actually, your partners, they mirror your patterns. Mm-hmm. You have no chances to attract partners who don't have the same patterns as you.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, there is another power that influences your life. And this power is called BID, basic inner desire. This is the power when somebody among your ancestors dreamed about something but never achieved. And all your ancestors dreamed about relations that are in love, but when everybody, husband and the wife, a partner, one partner and another partner are happy in the marriage, and nobody needs to dominate over each other, nobody needs to fight, nobody needs to have control, nobody needs to be like looking whether somebody is going to kill me or not. They were dreaming about it. And this is actually the power that your partners have. So besides patterns, they have also this same basic inner desire in maybe in different form, but you were attracted to each other by these two powers. And you can show them this recorded session if you are brave enough.
Yeah, it requires a lot of bravery to reveal.
It will help them a lot to have more harmonious relations in your team.
Yeah, I can see that.
Cool. Okay, so your homework is to actually focus consciously on all those emotional things you felt before. Every time you feel a desire to suppress, to dominate, to avoid responsibility, you just write down this in your document. And then instead of every time you have that idea, you need to replace it with another idea. And when you think about dominating, think about how can I marry our strengths?
Mm-hmm.
Every time when you feel, think about avoiding responsibility, think about this idea: responsibility equals control over my life. But you shouldn't also follow the over-responsibility path. So you're responsible only of you, your life, your feelings, your success. You have zero responsibility over any other person's life. You just have no control over it. It's naturally impossible. Only you is the person who can change something. When you decide to change something, when you decide to focus your attention to do something, you can't just force anybody to make the change in his life until he decides it. Okay. Another thing is every time you feel scared about new strategies, focus on the idea that the real reason for your ancestors faced failures in various forms is not that they decided to change their life by choosing what they love. The real reason is, first, they decided to like break the law, or they decided to mentally kill by dominating, or they decided to avoid responsibility and became dependent. These are the real reasons. And by thinking of this every time, you get back control over your life.
Mm-hmm.
You move from emotional level to rational. That's it for now. Also, I recommend to write down all the questions and all the struggles that you will face. And you will. Because this is an absolutely new area for you. Nobody of your ancestors ever been there. You have no idea how to act there. You are a pioneer. You are the first person on the moon. Yeah. Nobody told you. It's like you are a newborn. Have you ever seen a newborn baby?
Yes, it feels like I'm a newborn right now.
Yeah. And that newborn baby knows nothing.
Yes.
And this is you now. And you need to develop that skill just from nothing. It will be hard. And all those hard things you will face, just write them down and then send me. There are solutions to all the hard things. They can be solved. Just know this. And write them down, and you can email me and I will help you how to move on step by step. Okay?
Sounds good.
Cool.
It's gonna take me some time to process everything, what just happened. But I really feel like I'm a newborn person. And
okay. Happy birthday.
Thank you. It's really my second birthday today, I guess. There's definitely a new person being born, or will be being born. Thank you so much.
It was a huge pleasure for me. I love this.
Yeah, and I'm really, really hoping that many, many people will be able to experience the same thing with you. And thank you for it.
I will be happy. Okay, waiting for your successes, for your huge successes.
Sounds good. Thanks again.
See you.
See you. Bye.